as last time. Wonderful. Well, so welcome everyone to our Monday evening meditation. I want to begin with a very simple statement. This moment has never happened before. Now, I know that sounds kind of obvious, but most of the time it's not how we experience life. We wake up and think, here's another Monday. Here's the same room, the same work, the same people, the same thoughts, the same old me. And of course, there is continuity. We recognize our surroundings. We remember who we are. We know how things normally work. That continuity is useful. But it can also place a kind of film over experience. So instead of meeting what is actually happening now, we meet our memory of what normally happens. We hear a familiar sound and we stop listening. We see a familiar face and assume we already know the person and what's going on for them. We notice a familiar thought and immediately enter the familiar story attached to it. And even meditation can become familiar in that kind of way. We sit down, close our eyes, we notice our breath, perhaps wait for the body to relax, wait for the mind to quieten, and before long we've decided what kind of meditation we're having. This is a restless one. Oh, my mind's busy tonight. I'm not getting very deep. This was easier last week. If we go back to the early days of iMeditate, one of the golden rules of meditation, do not compare one session to another. But the judgment is usually based on that comparison. And we compare this breath with an earlier breath, or this moment and meditation with the last one, or one that we did that was really good when this one doesn't feel so. And perhaps in doing that, we're missing something, because this breath has never happened before. This particular sound has never been heard in precisely this moment. This sensation has never appeared within exactly this body after exactly this day, alongside exactly these thoughts. Even a familiar thought even if it is occurring right now, it may contain familiar words, but the person hearing it has lived through every moment that's happened since the last time that thought appeared. So tonight, rather than trying to reach a particular state, we're going to explore the living moment of experience. Things beginning, changing, ending, and something else arising. And we're not going to do it as a philosophy, something we need to believe, just simply as something we can notice. We'll take a breath, and we often speak of the breath as though breathing is one continuous object. There is no single breath. There is the inhalation, this exhalation, and then they're gone. And the next breath may be similar, but it's not the same breath returning. A sound begins, it changes while it's present, then it ends. A sensation appears, perhaps it intensifies, maybe it moves, it softens, it disappears. A thought arises, and even if we attempt to hold it still, it begins changing into another thought. Experience is not made of things which remain. It is movement. And perhaps some of the struggles that we can have come from treating movement as though it should become fixed. We want pleasant feelings to remain. We want unpleasant feelings to leave. We want clarity to stay. We want uncertainty to end. We'll hold one moment and hurry through all the others. Tonight, we're not going to try to stop that tendency. We are simply going to notice something more fundamental. Whatever arises is already changing. We do not have to make experience move. It is moving. And perhaps there can be a particular kind of peace in recognizing that. Not the peace of everything becoming still, the peace of no longer demanding that movement stop. And so I think we'll begin with sound, not imagining sounds, not analyzing sounds, simply listening closely enough to discover that even one ordinary sound has a life of its own. So make yourself comfortable. Don't need to sit or lie in any particular way for this. Just allow your body to find a position which it can maintain reasonably easily for the next few minutes. And in a moment, we'll take 3 deep breaths, breathing in and out. And on the 3rd breath, I'll invite you to close your eyes. Or maybe you'll lower your gaze. Whatever you choose to do to relax. Let's take those 3 deep breaths now. Breathing in. Hold it. Breathe out. Breathing in. Hold it. And breathe out. Breathing in. Hold it. And breathe out. And whether you choose to lower your gaze or allow your eyes to close to relax, just do that now. And simply recognize that you are sitting or lying wherever you are. Listening. And to begin with, just start by noticing any sounds that are around you. Perhaps sounds within your room, sounds from elsewhere in the building, sounds outside, the sound of my voice. I don't want you to search out for a special sound, just allow the sounds that are happening to come to you. And as you allow those sounds to come to you, notice that hearing is already happening. You're not having to reach out and collect sounds. A sound occurs and it is known. So now choose just one sound. Maybe it's the most obvious sound at this moment. And I wonder what it would be like if you were to start listening to it as though you'd never heard anything quite like it before. Not asking what's making the sound, not deciding whether you like it, simply hearing its texture. Is the sound continuous? Is it made of many small changes? Does it remain at one volume? Does its tone alter? Is it in one place or does it seem to move? And if possible, notice the beginning of a sound, the moment when silence becomes sound. Notice how the sound changes while it is present. Notice its ending. The moment when sound becomes silence again. Perhaps another sound has already appeared, and another. No sound needs to be held. No silence needs to be prolonged. The sound begins. It lives briefly, it changes, and it ends. Now, allow your attention to widen. Rather than focusing just on one sound, open up and receive the whole field of sound. All sounds, near and far, loud and quiet, expected and unexpected. Notice that there is no single moment when the world of sound is completely fixed. Something is always beginning, something changing, something ending. Even the sound of my voice is not one sound. A word begins, moves through itself, and disappears. Another word follows. And by the time you understand a sentence, the sounds which formed its beginning have already gone. So just listen, without attempting to remember. Let each sound be complete when it ends. And you may notice the mind naming sounds, traffic, bird, heating, voice, movement. And naming's not a problem. Just simply notice that the name often feels more stable than the sound itself. Traffic appears to be one thing, but the actual sound is continually changing. And so for a little while, listen beneath the names, not trying to stop the words, simply becoming more interested in the living sound than its label. If there's a sound that appears unpleasant, just be aware of it. Something that jars or niggles at you. Perhaps the mind tightens around it. Perhaps there's an impulse for it to stop. But you don't have to pretend to enjoy it. Just listen to its movement. Does even this sound remain unchanged? If a pleasant sound appears, notice that as well. Perhaps there's an impulse to follow it or hold on to it. But just notice that that too changes. Pleasant sounds pass. Unpleasant sounds pass. Neutral sounds pass. Sound does not ask permission before changing. And so now become aware of the silence around sound. Not a perfect silence, the small spaces, the pauses, the moment after one sound ends and before another becomes prominent. Sounds appear from quietness and returns to quietness. Neither sound nor silence needs to win. They belong to one movement. But now let go of listening so closely. Allow sound to remain present without making it the center of attention. Just become aware of your body sitting or lying there in the room. Contact beneath you. Take a slightly fuller breath, move the fingers and toes. And when you're ready, just allow your eyes to gently open, just enjoying that space. Before anyone says or does anything, just simply notice the room with the eyes open. There are colours, shapes, possibly movement, familiar objects. But notice whether they appear slightly fresher after listening in that way. Just be mindful of what you noticed about sound. Did sound seem solid? Or were they more changeable than you normally recognize? Did you find a place where you could hear a sound before naming it? Was there a difference in how pleasant and unpleasant sounds felt when you listened to their movement rather than their meaning? One of the things we may discover is that the actual experience is often lighter than the idea we form about it. A sound may last only a moment, but the mind can continue complaining about it for several minutes. A sentence may be spoken once, but we can replay it internally for days. The original event changes and ends. The mind creates continuity by remembering, repeating, and interpreting. And that's not wrong. Memory allows us to learn. But perhaps it's useful to distinguish between what is happening now and what the mind is keeping alive. So we're going to go into another meditation now. And we're going to just observe the way experience forms and dissolves. And if you have moments where the mind says, I know what this is, perhaps we can look again, because this particular moment has never happened before. So take a nice deep breath in. You should breathe out, just allowing your eyes to gently close, just in the time that you need to take to relax back, to arrive in that moment. Not attempting to recreate the earlier meditation, because obviously that one's finished. This is a new beginning. Let your arms relax, your legs. And become aware of your breathing. Not the breath as a general idea. This particular inhalation and this particular exhalation. That one there. That one there. Notice how the breath begins. Perhaps so gradually that there's no clear boundary. The body changes direction. Air begins entering. Movement appears within the chest or abdomen. The inhalation develops, changes, and reaches an ending. Then the out-breath begins. It too has a beginning, a middle which never remains still, and an ending. And there's no need to make the breath smooth. A rough breath is also changing. A shallow breath is also changing. A breath interrupted by thought is still a breath which has never occurred before. So just receive each breath only once, because no breath returns. The next breath does not replace the last. It is simply the next movement of life. Perhaps the mind begins anticipating. It knows roughly what breathing feels like. It may stop paying attention because it believes nothing new is happening. And yet, look more closely. Is this inhalation exactly the same length as the last? Does it begin in precisely the same way? Does the body move in exactly the same places? Just simply remain curious. So now let's expand our awareness out to include bodily sensation. Not methodically traveling around the body, just allow the most obvious sensation to present itself. It might be the contact with where you're sitting or lying, the temperature in the room, pressure, movement, tingling, heaviness. And just notice where the sensation seems to be. And just notice whether its boundary is as definite as the mind first assumes. Does it remain the same size, the same intensity, the same shape? Perhaps the sensation pulses, spreads, contracts, fades, was replaced by another. Even what appears solid may contain movement. And perhaps the mind names the sensation. Tension, comfort, pain, warmth, restlessness. Notice the word remains relatively still, but the actual sensation continues changing beneath it. And so I wonder what happens if for a few moments you allow sensation to be more interesting than its name. There really is no requirement to enjoy what is felt, no requirement to become detached. Simply notice. This is what is present now. And even now, whatever that is changing. If the body becomes uncomfortable, you may move. And if you do move, notice the movement, the intention to move, the beginning, the changing sensations, the moment the body settles again. Movement is not an interruption to meditation. It's another unrepeatable event. So let's include thoughts. Not searching for them, just simply notice when one appears. A word, an image, a memory, a plan, commentary upon the meditation. Notice how suddenly a thought may seem to be there. And once noticed, it has already begun changing. A thought about tomorrow becomes a picture, an idea. The picture produces a feeling, the feeling produces another thought, and within moments, an entire world has appeared. And again, you do not have to stop it. Simply notice the movement. Can one thought remain completely unchanged, or does the effort to hold it create a new thought about the first? Thought is movement. Even the thought, my mind will not stop, begins, changes, and ends. Another thought comes, and perhaps for a moment you forget the meditation. You become involved. And then awareness returns. And there really is no need to return to the moment. The moment did not go anywhere. A period of thinking happened, then a period of noticing happened. Both appeared within the movement of experience. So allow everything to be present together. Breathing, sensation, sound and thought. And don't choose one as the correct object of meditation. Just allow the field to change all by itself. Maybe a sound becomes prominent, then a sensation, then a thought, then breathing. Attention moves. Experience moves. You do not need to arrange the order. And perhaps notice how the mind creates the impression of a continuous world. It joins one moment to the next. It remembers what has just happened, then anticipates what may happen next. And somewhere between memory and prediction, it says, this is what is happening. But our actual experience is always slightly ahead of the description. By the time a moment has been named, it's already changed. And perhaps you can discover something quietly freeing in that. You do not have to complete this moment. It completes itself by passing. You do not have to remove this thought. It cannot remain in exactly this form. And you do not have to hold this stillness. This stillness changes. something else will be there. So let the moment finish. And let the next moment begin without asking it to resemble the last. This sound once. This breath once. This sensation once. This thought once. And perhaps there's a desire for something to happen, a deeper state, a clearer experience, a sense of peace. Notice that desire, notice it. Notice that desire as another event. It begins. It has sensations, perhaps words, perhaps an image of how meditation ought to feel. And it too changes. There's no need to satisfy it, no need to remove it. A desire can be present without becoming an instruction. Perhaps there is boredom. Notice what boredom actually consists of. Is there one continuous object called boredom? Or are there sensations, thoughts, an impulse to move, an idea that something else should be happening? Look closely enough, and even boredom moves. Perhaps there is calm. Notice that calm is also alive. Breathing continues, sounds appear, small movements occur. Calm is not a frozen state. It is one way this changing moment may be experienced. And because it's changing, it does not need to be grasped. The moment after calm is not failure. It is simply the next moment. And perhaps much of life is spent attempting to continue what has already ended, replaying a pleasure, replaying a hurt, maintaining an identity, trying to remain the person we were yesterday. Perhaps something becomes simpler when we recognize yesterday is complete. The earlier part of today is complete. The beginning of this meditation is complete. Only this remains. And even as the words are spoken, this has become something else. Not emptiness, not loss. Living moment. Perhaps this is why life cannot be possessed. can only be met. And perhaps you do not have to meet all of life. Only this. And now this. And now this. And there may be a quiet awareness of change, not watching from somewhere outside experience, awareness itself appearing as part of this moment. You do not need to find the one who is aware. There is seeing when the eyes are open, hearing, feeling, thinking, knowing. And perhaps there's no need to place a separate observer behind it all. This moment knows itself by being lived. And so allow all instruction to become less important now. You do not need to continue doing anything I've suggested. Let experience arrive in its own order. Let it remain for as long as it remains. Let it change. Let it end. Nothing to repeat. Nothing to preserve. Nothing to hurry away. This moment has never happened before. And perhaps because it cannot happen again, you do not need to make it special. You only need to be here while it is here. And so begin to notice the body more clearly. Not the body you started or remember starting the meditation with, the body as it is now. Notice the position of the hands, the feet, the contact beneath you. Notice sounds. Perhaps the same source of sounds were present earlier, but these are not the same sounds. Take a nice full deep breath and notice that breath from beginning to end. Breathing in and out. Moving the fingers, the toes. Have a bit of a stretch and allow your eyes to open when they're ready, when you're ready to return back. Look around without immediately rushing to name everything. Color, shape, light, distance. The room may be familiar, but this seeing is happening now. And so before we finished, notice the temptation to decide what kind of meditation that was. whether it was good or difficult, deep or restless, interesting, boring, and whatever judgment appears, it's not a problem. Simply recognize that it's the mind creating a summary of something which has already passed. That summary may be useful, but it's not the experience itself. Perhaps during the week, there may be moments when something feels stale or repetitive. Another journey, a meeting, a meal, family conversation, and perhaps you can quietly remember, this has never happened before. Not using it as a slogan or a mantra, just simply looking again, listening again. Meeting the person who's actually present rather than only the person you remember. Feeling the breath, which is actually happening rather than the general idea of breathing. And perhaps meditation is partly that willingness to meet life before assuming we already know it. Hope you've enjoyed that session tonight. Thank you all for being part of it. If you've got anything you want to share from that, do feel free. I'll just stop the recording.